Hey everyone! Sorry it's a little bit different this week. For some reason Facebook decided it was going to force us into doing a vertical video. But I hope you guys are having a great week.
Can't even see us.
Oh, well you can sort of see us. Hopefully you guys can. Is that better?
It's fine.
Sorry guys, maybe I'll have my computer set up where it'll look more, or where we can do it on there in the future and look a little bit more normal. So, anywho, tonight we're going to be talking about our top 10 personal development books, and I particularly thought that this would be helpful. If it's not helpful, let us know. But I said to come prepared because I think having a notebook or your device out to be able to take notes and to write down the ones that you think are helpful is important. Also, I believe that books can be such an amazing gateway to changing your life and to developing and growing in a way that you would have never grown personally had you not read a book like one of the ones we're talking about tonight. Any other intro comments before we dive in?
I mean, this is an impossible task, so I think these is a more adequate title would be top personal development books. These aren't the top 5 necessarily. For mine, I just tried to pick ones that are very approachable and timeless, and that may introduce you to other similar works or similar titles, or an author that you might read more of their books. There's like 5 books isn't impossible because we both chose 5 books. Some people, well, maybe we'll get to that later, but I agree that books are a gateway to new possibilities, to coaching that you could never afford, to people that maybe have lived in the past that have already died, that their words are recorded there and therefore you're learning. And the one thing that I think reading, if you're an avid reader already, that you have to be careful of is, are you applying what you're reading? Right. Because it's so easy to just read a book, put it down, read another book, and get caught into the trap of counting how many books you read a year, or being able to say, I read such and such books, and it's so more important to take a few lessons out of each book and then apply that. Absolutely. As opposed to just trying to stack up titles and read as much as possible. I think for people who love to read, that can be a challenge. For people who love to, check things off the box, that can be a challenge too, because it's a lot more fun to check off how many books you've read in a year as opposed to what did I apply from this 1 or 2 or 3 books in a year. Absolutely. But yeah, I think, there's the saying, readers are leaders. And so if you have the aspiration to lead in any capacity, then reading is a great way to get there.
Yeah, and one kind of fun thing too is a lot of the time you'll be reading a book and they'll give you either like a list in the back of the book, or they'll mention different other books that either like have some sort of relation to what they're talking about, or could be a great spin-off book that kind of helps you to further pursue education in a passion or whatever. And so I think it's so cool because over time we both expanded our lists, partly because of books that have been recommended in books that we're reading too. So I think that's really fun. Sorry. So do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay. So do you think we should count down or to our top, or are we not?
No.
No. Okay.
The top 5.
I'm just like, let's do a countdown. Okay. So my number 1 favorite book that I love to recommend is called Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. And I don't have a physical copy on me. I have read it multiple times on Audible. And it's a fantastic read. Every book, I always like to say, you're going to take the good and you're going to leave the rest. So no book that I've read other than the Bible do I align with perfectly. And that's okay. It helps to push you and forces you to look at things in a different way, kind of like what Matt said. And so one thing I absolutely love about Daring Greatly is she challenges you to expand your relationship with shame and vulnerability. And she talks about how those things can be related and how you can actually start to develop yourself and deepen your relationships with other people by delving into those topics. And she's actually a shame and vulnerability researcher, as well as I think maybe to some extent resilience as well. So I just absolutely love her work. You really can't go wrong with any of her books, but that's my absolute favorite, partly too because a lot of like the references that she uses really speak to my heart.
So another preface to my earlier comments are some of the books that I've chosen are about the thought process and the mindset as opposed to necessarily applicability. There's a lot of books that are going to tell you step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Right.
but the books I've chosen are more of a higher bird's eye view that are going to tell you how to have the thought process, the mindset to have that are going to allow you to get into the nitty gritty. And the other thing I think is important too is to what was the original source of the information. Like there's so many books published every day, every year, right. But that are being pulled from books that were written originally hundreds of years
right.
ago. And so the closer to the source you can get to some of that information, the better it's going to be, the more valuable it's going to be. So some of these books I've chosen are older, are from some of the, originators of what we would call, personal development or growth mindset approaches. And so my first book is in that vein. It's called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. He died in 1912, so it's a pretty old book. And again, this is really about how you think and the power of your mind, the power of your mindset. And I'll just read one quote. There's so many underlines in here, so I just picked one. But it says, "A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its result on the character and circumstances. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly, yet surely, shape his circumstances." So again, that's just the mindset that you should have about the circumstances you're in, the choices you can make. And you'll notice if you read this book, a lot of newer books have taken some of those ideas and broken them out, put their twist on them, extreme ownership, being accountable. But this is one of the original books, and so it's very short too, very approachable. It is a little old English, but you can get around that really easy, and everybody should read this book. I usually read it twice a year, so that's my first recommendation.
I've also found with this book, As a Man Thinketh, that it's helpful for me to read it out loud because the old English is not exactly my strong suit. So it's very helpful for me. Okay, so then my next book, number 2, is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's by Susan Jeffers. Oops, there we go. And it's dynamic techniques for turning fear, indecision, and anger into power, action, and love. So when I first started my Arbonne business, I knew that fear was a huge, huge thing that I was battling. And so as soon as I even heard of this book, I was like, I know I need to read this. I know that this is an area of weakness and I need to delve into this. And so hopefully some areas where you have evaluated your strengths and weaknesses, and you can delve into some books that will help you in those areas. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, right? And so jumping into one of those things can be really, really helpful. And so I slowly went through this book and did all of the exercises, and I just found it to be so powerful, so helpful, such a practical book, and really helps to paint the picture of what you can sort of shift your mindset to when it comes to fear and some of these other things, indecision and anger. We don't really often, or at least I don't really often link those things, but often those things are linked. And so what's so cool is that she really paints a picture of how you can really start to reevaluate how you approach fear and all these other areas and how they're really interconnected. So definitely highly recommend this one. And I don't know of an audio version of this one, so I love being able to have the physical copy, especially to kind of see some of her diagrams. Whereas the Brené Brown one, I love being able to listen to. It's a really easy one to listen to.
All right, so my next one is in the same vein as the As a Man Thinketh. This book, The Positive Principle Today by Vincent Peale. You'll hear a lot of people like Eric Thomas, I think Jack Canfield, Tony Robbins, a lot of these people, they will refer to him because, again, he's one of the originators of this personal development movement. The thing I also like about him is he has a really deep connection to faith. He references God in a lot of his books. He may have even been a pastor of some kind, or if I'm remembering correctly. His first book, or the one he was more known for, was The Power of Positive Thinking. I've read that one as well, which is very good, but this one, The Positive Principle Today, I think is a little bit more approachable, maybe a little bit better. And again, just really helps you through the mindset of positive thinking and why it's important. And the quote I'll read from it is from his chapter on eliminating the word impossible. And he says, let me see. One of the chief lessons or truths to be learned by thoughtful people is that the so-called impossible is indeed possible to those who have the will, the courage, and the faith. So this is another pretty easy read, a little bit older, but you can find this anywhere, and a really, really great book to have on your nightstand as I drop it accidentally.
Awesome. Okay, number 3 is The Success Principles by Jack Canfield that Matt was just talking about. So this was a book that I read earlier on in my business, and after I started, and I was very intimidated by large books. So I actually got this on Audible first and read it, listened to it a few times, and then I ended up getting the physical copy as well because there's a lot of exercises and questions he kind of has you walk through that are really great. And I actually think I have some marked here where he has you do like a vision exercise and different things. And it's really been insightful for me to figure out like what are some areas that I really find joy in. Because I think a lot of the time, and I know that this is referenced all the time in books, but it's not so much that we don't want things in life, it's that we're not clear on what we do want. And so he's trying to help you get clear. And so regardless of who you are, what your career path is like, man, woman, if you're older and more advanced in years or you're younger, it really doesn't matter because this book is going to be great. And I've even given this away as a wedding gift before because it is just so fantastic and has so many like great life principles in it, just all around. And in fact, I really need to reread it because it's been a few years, but I love, love, love this book.
Alrighty. All right, so this next book, getting a little bit into more modern authors for me, this is a book that like I had never heard anybody talk about. I honestly can't recall exactly how I heard about it. It may have been his brother. So this book is called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. You can see it is super thin, very, very short. His brother is named Naval Ravikant. He's a Silicon Valley investor. He was made famous kind of by Tim Ferriss. And so I think that's probably where I found out about it. But this book is, one of the quotes on the back from somebody else says, one of the most important books I've read this year. And I would say this is one of the most important books I've ever read because it really is about changing your relationship with yourself. If you're somebody who struggles with positive thinking, with self-doubt, with negative mindset, with looking down on yourself, anything of that nature, this really walks you through how to handle that and gives you some tools and some tactics to face those things and change them. So one of the quotes from it, it's talking about the mental loops that we play in our minds, the things that may or may not be true, but we tell ourselves over and over, and they're like a running cassette tape playing over and over. And he says, I once heard someone explain thoughts as this: we are human beings. We think that we're thinking. That's not true. Most of the time we're remembering. We're reliving memories. We're running familiar patterns and loops in our head. For happiness, for procrastination, for sadness, fears, hopes, dreams, desires. We have loops for everything. And so he goes on to say that we replay these loops and they in turn trigger feelings. And so he really breaks it down very simply, very easily, and gives you some tools to help, like it says, love yourself like your life depends on it. And I think another important point for Christians is sometimes there's this idea that we shouldn't love ourselves,
Right.
that we always need to be directed out towards other people.
Right.
And the truth is, at least my opinion, I think its truth is that we have to learn to love ourselves before we really can love other people in the way that we should. Mm-hmm. And there's a little, there's a balancing of that, of course, but this book is really important in getting your mindset straight, and you can read it in an hour, and the lessons you learn will last, I think, a lifetime.
Absolutely. Definitely been such an important book for me too. And I found that when I love myself better, it's amazing how much I can love other people better. Okay, the next one is another one that I have on Audible, and it's called The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. And she actually came up with her theory of the 5-second rule while watching one of those rocket launch things, where they start counting down from 10. And basically she was in a rut in her life. She was having a really rough time when it came to pretty much every area. Her husband and her were in financial trouble. She was having some problems with leaning too much on alcohol, other bad habits of waking up late, things like that, just in her life. And so she was like, what if I just counted down from 5 and just did it? And so it's really interesting because she started to change her life using this 5-second rule. And then she realized that later on, she realized that she had actually tapped into something that was really powerful. And there's a lot of scientific research now that she's discovered that backs up her theory, basically. And so she goes into so many lessons kind of learned from that experience, and then also just ways to apply the 5-second rule and how it's changed not only her life but other people's lives. And it's been really impactful for me. Every time I read it, I really come away with something new. And I know a lot of the time we talk ourselves out of things, and so it usually takes us about 5 seconds to do that. So she's like, if you count down from 5, then you just have to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And you're a lot more likely to do the thing if you just immediately get into action.
All right, let's see.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Sorry. If you get the Audible version, it's actually really great because she adds a lot of things that I think aren't in the printed version. And so a lot of her commentary and even how she reads the book is really fun in the audio version, just FYI.
Okay, so this book is called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. Steven Pressfield was somebody who he tried to write books. He wanted to be an author for years and years, and he kept getting rejection. I think it was 10 plus years he kept getting rejected. And he would just work odd jobs to make enough money for him to work on his next book and continue to get rejected. And finally, I think his first book might have been Gates of Fire, which is about, I believe it's about the Battle of Thermopylae. I may be getting that mixed up. But anyway, he's written a lot of books now, and one of his most recent ones that he wrote is called The Warrior Ethos, which I highly recommend, especially for men. But this book is especially applicable for creative people, anybody who's working on something creative like writing, an artist of any kind, musician, poet, etc. And he really talks about, like it says, the War of Art, kind of a play off the Art of War book by Sun Tzu. And he really is great at talking about the kind of creating this alter ego or explaining what it is that's having us not do the things that we say we want to do. And he calls that the resistance. And he really breaks it down very applicably, where you actually feel it and you're like, oh yeah, that's what that is. And you'll have these moments where you think, oh man, I felt that way. That's how I feel. So really good book. The quote I'll read from here, he's talking about fear. And he says, are you paralyzed with fear? That's a good sign. Fear is good. Like self-doubt, fear is an indicator. Fear tells us what we have to do. Remember our rule of thumb. The more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. So just kind of playing off that 5-second rule, sometimes fear is an indicator of something that we have to do. And I think you'll think of those moments where you have that pit in your stomach where you know this is something I need to do, but I don't want to do it.
Right.
That's an indicator that we should be doing that. And again, this is a very approachable book, very easy read. You could read this in a day and you'll want to reread it over and over.
Yeah, that is, for me, that's often not where my brain goes. And so having that reframing of, I love that it's like fear is an indicator. It's a sign that you're probably needing to wake up to what you really want to do, and that you're probably on the right track, honestly. Okay, so my fifth and final one is called No Limits. And it kind of has a funny subtitle. It's called Blow the Cap Off Your Capacity, which I know sounds a little funny, but it's by John Maxwell. And his point with this book is he's talking about how we believe something, we're capable of something, right? But then if we think like, oh, I can raise $100 for this cause, but often we don't think big enough, and so we only have the capacity to raise the $100 because that's what we're thinking of. Now, I don't mean that's actually our capacity, but he's just saying when you expand that, then it's amazing because you have this much larger capacity. And that's just like a really small kind of odd example, but he's talking about this in like every area, like the capacity you have for relationships, the capacity you have in business, the capacity you have for being able to give back and to make a difference in your community, things like that. So there's a lot of different like applications, and he talks about a lot of different things. The most the biggest way that he shares information, and he shares kind of how you can shift your mindset and things like that, is through storytelling. And so there is a really incredible story that he talks about getting into this like really difficult tennis match to get into. Anyways, it's really really neat. But I really enjoy this book. I particularly have loved like listening to it. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember if he reads this particular one or not, but of course it depends on who's reading it, because sometimes that can make a difference too, I realize, with audio versions. But it's just been really helpful to just listen to it. It's kind of more soothing for me, and it really helps me to get a lesson, especially like at the ends of your day, like beginning and end of the day is a great time to really fill your mind with something really positive. And his stories are often really interesting or funny, so or just heartwarming. There we go. But I love, really, you can't go wrong with a John Maxwell book, in my opinion. Matt is not a fan.
Well, I think that's an important thing to point out. Like, different authors are going to speak to different people based on what you're trying to accomplish, your background, your learning style. And that's okay. So that's why you have to try different ones and see, that doesn't really speak to me, I don't get it, and then try a different one.
Exactly.
And that's why we have to get over being paralyzed if once I start a book, I got to finish it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't speak to you, I'm not saying, read the first page and throw it out. But once you get into a little bit and see, like, there's no law that you have to finish a book.
Oh, for sure. Totally agree.
I mean, I kind of believe that law, but I know it's not true. Because I like to finish it, right. But I know that's not real. And so if you're not comfortable with it, if it's not speaking to you, you have a limited amount of time, give it a chance, and then move on to somebody who speaks to you. And hopefully these books will give you some options to delve into somebody who you haven't yet.
Yeah, and I think it's important also in that note, I think that's a really, really good point, that if you are reading a book and it doesn't speak to you at that time, maybe come back and revisit it, because I found that when I read a book at a certain time, I get different things out of it than other times. So it could be that later it would be a better fit when you're in a different place in your growth journey. And it's amazing how you get different things. It's like that, what is that saying? Like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Like, different times in your life, you're going to be ready to learn different lessons, or you're going to be seeing different things different ways because of where you are. And so that's what's so cool too, is to come back and revisit some of these books. Like Matt was saying, like, he reads certain books every year. I can imagine every time you revisit them, you see something different because you are in a different place, growth wise. Yeah,
for sure. So sadly, my last book, and again, this is I chose this book by Seth Godin because I want you to introduce you to him. While I love this book that is called What to Do When It's Your Turn, and It's Always Your Turn. This is a really great book, again, more a little bit skewed towards creative, somebody who's trying to write a book, write music, something of that nature. But he's written some incredible books: Permission Marketing, The Dip, Icarus Deception, Purple Cow. He's written, I think, 20 plus books, The Idea Virus. And what I really appreciate, first of all, you'll note this book looks a little odd. I mean, it's kind of an odd design. And if you flip through it, you can see it has some odd designs as well. And what I really appreciate about Seth, who kind of started out and got more notoriety from marketing, is he's not afraid to try new things. He's always like, he has an idea and he goes all in, whether he succeeds or fails, he learns something and then tries something else. And so the quote I'll read from this one is, his question is, who owes you? And he says, things get much better when we internalize two things. One, nobody owes you anything, no, not even a thank you. And two, it is actually you who owes the world and its denizens. You take up space, physical and emotional, and you better have something good to show for it. So he's very big, again, on personal responsibility, and that if you have a gift, it's your responsibility to share it, to find it, cultivate it, and share it. It's not your responsibility on how it's accepted or received, but it's your responsibility to send, to how he says, to ship it, to use it, not hold it in forever and be paralyzed by perfection. And so again, for anybody who's creative or wants to be creative, has something they want to share with people, that's another great book and a good introduction to some of his other books.
I love it. I really need to delve into some Seth Godin myself. I've really wanted to for a while, and I just need to do it, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So yeah, anything else to say before I kind of do a call to action?
I actually have a bonus book.
Ooh, bonus book.
For,
you guys didn't even plan on this.
For guys, or if you are a guy or if you know a guy.
If you know a guy.
They need to read this book called Iron John by Robert Bly. He really delves into masculinity, what it means, some of the, he uses some mythological stories to help explain the different roles of a man, the different struggles that are specific to men, and it's just an incredible book. I think I was introduced to it last year or this year for the first time, and you should, again, if you are a man, buy it, read it. If you know a man, buy it, have them read it. It's just like a book that is an incredible read, nothing I knew existed, and really helps explain some of the journey from being a boy into a man and some of those struggles that come along with that. Okay, so you have a second call to action there. If you know a man, or if you are a man. Sorry. Anyways, that was awesome. I love that. And so that you guys have all this information, we're going to put all of the books in the comments or in the description if you're watching it on YouTube. Also, a quick call to action. If you have a book, a personal development book that you really love, we would love to know about it. I'm sure other people who are watching this video would also love to know about it. And so please share that with us. We would love to be able to hear what you guys are enjoying, or if one of the books that we talked about you really particularly love, whatever, share whatever you would like about your favorite personal development books. But we just really felt like this was an important topic, and that hopefully you guys could get some life-changing information from one of these books. And again, follow us on Instagram at No More Some Days with a Z. We are going to be doing a giveaway once we get to 1,000 followers. And also, please follow us or subscribe and share on YouTube, No More Some Days. And thank you guys again for watching. Thanks. Have a good night.